In this video, we're going to show you how to install the intake manifold on your Cadillac Escalade located on the top side of the engine. Locate the fuse box, pull the cover off, and you want to locate using the identification here, gas or diesel where you have a gas, and locate your fuel pump relay, which is right here. You want to now find it inside the fuse panel and remove that relay. Lift up on the engine cover and remove it. Using an 8mm socket, we're going to go ahead and loosen this hose clamp and this hose clamp here. Now go ahead and remove the PCV from the intake tube and grab the air intake and gently pull it off of the throttle body. Removing injector harness connectors, lift up, or you can use a screwdriver, lift up on this plastic white clip right here, and then pinch the gray little tab right here, and disconnect. Do this for all 8 injectors. Using a 10mm socket, remove this nut for the wire harness bracket on the intake. Remove the harness, this clip, from the stud. Just pull the harness away from this upper plenum. Just to make some extra room here. Disconnect the harness from the alternator by pinching the clip in the back and pulling out. Remove this connector by lifting up on the tab and pulling that out. You want to push down on this plastic tab and pull it out off the connector. Remove this upper connector, press down on the tab, and pull away. Remove this plastic tube from the back. It's a little spring clip, you can't see it. Just use your finger, gently pull it away, and lift up. Remove the throttle body harness by pulling away on this gray connector. It's actually a lock. And then pinch down and pull off. Using a 10mm socket, disconnect both terminals on your battery. Disconnect the power wire to the back of the alternator using a 10mm socket. And set that aside. Using some towels, shop rags, anything that you might have, tuck underneath here. Undo the fuel rail cap, and we want to depressurize the system using a small screwdriver. Using a small screwdriver and wearing safety glasses, press on the Schrader to take the fuel pressure out of the fuel system. We're going to go ahead and remove the intake manifold bolts. There are 5 on each side. There's 1 here, there's 1 up front, and there's 3 more in the back. And do the same for the other side. With all the bolts loose, now go ahead and remove them. I'm going to go ahead and remove this engine cover plenum stud right here. It's not necessary, but for us to remove this hose right here, it'll make it easier for us to do that. Using a 10 millimeter. And then you want to go ahead and pull this out of the way. Lift the harness. And remove that. For ease of removal, we're going to zip tie up this harness to get it out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and tuck some towels underneath the fuel line in case there's any residual fuel left in here when we disconnect it from the fuel rail. I'm going to use a hook pick, release the clip, remove the fuel line clip. Now use the fuel pressure line removal clip here. You want to open that up, slide it over the fuel line. And then push it inward to release the lock on that fuel line. Might need some assistance of some pliers here. Move this hose here by putting pressure on this clip. Open it up and slip this off. You want to do that to the same side over here. Use a 15 millimeter. You can use a wrench or a breaker bar. Take the tension off the belt and remove the belt. Using a 15 millimeter socket and ratchet, go ahead and remove this alternator bolt. Just loosen this bolt. Don't want to remove it. Then we're going to go ahead and use a small pry bar and spin the alternator out of the way. And grab the throttle body and the fuel rail, lift up on the intake. Might have to move a couple hoses. Going to remove this vacuum hose from the brake booster. This goes to the back of the intake manifold. Next, go ahead and plug all of the intake holes with towels or rags. Then you want to use a vacuum and clean up all of the debris around the perimeter. Using a 10mm socket, we're going to go ahead and remove these nuts and bolts from the throttle body and remove that from the intake. Go ahead and separate the throttle body. Using an E5 reverse Torx bit socket, we're going to go ahead and remove these studs. Go ahead and install the studs in the upper position. Get those bottomed out by hand. You want to go ahead and tighten these studs both to 53 inch-pounds. Go ahead and install your throttle body. Get the nuts started on the top. And then go ahead and put the bolts in the bottom and get those started by hand. You want to go ahead and torque all these down to 89 inch-pounds. Go in through the top of the clip, press down, and then you want to pry it outward. At the same time, lift up, bring the clip over, and push it over to unlock it from here. Now I want to go ahead and lift this sensor up. And swap it over to the other intake. Before we install this into the new intake, we're going to put a little bit of engine oil, fresh engine oil that is, right around the O-ring to make this slip in a little bit easier. Line this up, press down, reinstall the clip. Like so. Next, we're going to swap over this nut, and this stud and bring it over to the new intake. Using a 10mm socket, go ahead and loosen those and spin those right out. Go ahead and thread those down as far as you can get them. We're just putting this knot on here so we remember where that is. I'm going to go ahead and just snug these up. I'm going to go ahead and remove these 3 studs. And we're just going to swap this over to the new intake. Go ahead and just snug these up. Go ahead and remove this nut from the stud right here. And pop off this back cover. You want to go ahead and loosen this clamp, slide it down, and remove this hose from the back side of the intake. Just go ahead and press the hose back on with the clamp. It should pop right on just like so. Insert the hose into the backing cover. Slide the clamp on through. Just go ahead and line this up on the back. Slide that stud through the center, and then reinstall the nut and snug up that nut. Next, we're going to use an 8mm socket and remove this screw, and there's 2 more on the other side, here and here. And we're going to pull up the entire fuel rail system with all 8 injectors. All right, we're going to go ahead and reach back here to the back side of the fuel rail, apply a little bit of leverage and pull up gently, wiggling. And this should pull up on the injectors like so. I'm going to do this all the way down. There is a bracket right here that you want to swap over. We're going to do the same on the other side. Before you reinstall the fuel rail with all the injectors, gently wipe down and inspect all of the O-rings. Before reinstallation, use a little bit of fresh engine oil on each one of these O-rings. Dab it on your finger, just rub around. Now you want to go ahead and do that for both sides. Lower the fuel rail down with the injectors down into the ports, and then make sure they line up on the other side. Apply some pressure, and then you should pop right into the intake. Do the same for the other side. Don't forget to reinstall this securing tab, like so. Install the 4 8mm bolts. Once these are bottomed out, you can go ahead and torque them to 89 inch-pounds. We're going to go ahead and install the fuel rail Schrader valve cap right now, so we don't forget that. Install the intake gaskets. Repeat for the other side. All right, now going to want to install the new gaskets and the OE replacement right in the same location. You want to go ahead and install the brake booster hose. You're going to have to manipulate the intake over a bit and get that lined up and just kind of pop that into place. Before installation, don't forget to remove your towels from the intake. Do this for all 8. Now, picking up the intake by the throttle body, you can now go ahead and line that up and start putting that back into place. Okay, you want to make sure that the harness is loose, intake is set in, and at this point here you may have to redirect this vacuum hose just so that it's not interrupting with any of the electrical components here. Now go ahead and reconnect that hose, clamp back up top. Connect that fuel line, line that up, push it forward. And it snaps into place. And you want to go ahead and reinstall your locking clip here. Install the tabs into the fuel line itself, push back, and then snap that on. That'll lock it in. So go ahead and start with your intake bolts. Drop that down inside. Get the threads caught by hand. All right. Do the same for the next 4 on this side and repeat the steps for the 5 on the other side. So we're going to start by torquing the first round to 44 inch-pounds. There is a particular pattern of this here, and you may want to find this online. Starts off with number 1 in the middle, cross over to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and you have to crisscross. Then there's a second round where we have to tighten this. So let's go ahead and start with the first round to 44 inch-pounds. Stage 2, you want to go ahead back to the bolt number 1, and you want to torque these to 89 inch-pounds in that same cross pattern. All right, we're going to go ahead and snip this wire tie out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and drop the harness down into place. I'm going to remove this nut here and just kind of set this up and get that nut set and started. I want to go ahead and install this connector, this hose right here. That is going to install into the intake right here. Press it down, rotate it around and over. I'm going to connect that to the port on the back of the head. Snap it into place. All right, we're actually going to remove this nut one more time. Lift this harness just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and reconnect the plastic hose port on the back. Press that tab down, line that up, and insert that. And go ahead and set that nut back on the top. Thread that a couple threads. All right, we're going to go ahead and connect the rear injector harness. Click it, press the tab in, and do this all the way down for both sides. Reconnect this connector. You want to now go ahead and install this tube. Just line this up. Line up with the intake and just press down. You'll hear it click. I'll go ahead and snug up this 10mm nut. This is just a wire harness bracket. And just snug that. Now I'll go ahead and connect this. Pull it in until it clicks and you're all set. Go ahead and press this little connector onto the stud. This just holds the harness in place. Now we'll connect the throttle body harness, snap it in, clip. All right, go ahead and spin the alternator down into position. And might need to persuade that a little bit back into its position. Just tap that down. Go ahead and torque the alternator bolt to 41 foot-pounds. And go ahead and install the power cable to the back of the alternator. Put on that 10mm nut. You want to torque that to 80 inch-pounds. Once it's torqued, go ahead and slide the rubber boot down and onto that stud. Now we're going to go ahead and reconnect the alternator cord here and plug that in. Just press it down until it clips. Let's go ahead and line up the intake now. There'll be a rubber grommet right here. You want to make sure it lines up with the stud. Bring this down and just slide it onto the throttle body. Line that up with that. And at the same time, you want to come on over here and slip the hose onto the air box. Now we want to tighten up this hose clamp here and tighten up this hose clamp here. Now an upper radiator hose has this little plastic clamp. I want to line this pin up and squeeze that up into it. That'll support that. Now go ahead and clip this hose into place, and that's all set. Now we're going to apply a light coat of oil to this rubber seal. Just clean motor oil. And then we're going to go ahead and line that back up and snap that to the intake. Hook up the negative. And go ahead and install positive.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.